be conscious. First be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. So we have to explain what that means. Can you make it a little louder so I don't have to be so close?
Sure.
Just a little bit. After the battle of Kurukshetra, Bhishma Dev was waiting for Lord Krishna to appear. He wanted to die seeing Lord Krishna. And at that time, Krishna, he asked Yudhisthira to come. He asked Bhima to instruct Yudhisthira. Yudhisthira was now going to rule the world. And Bhishma was a statesman, and so Lord Krishna felt that Bhishma was the most qualified person to instruct him. And it's stated, you can read this in the 9th chapter of the first canto. I believe it's text 26. And Bhishma Dev explained to Yudhisthira what were the characteristics or qualities of human beings in a civilized society, because it's the duty of the king to ensure that people make spiritual progress, and of course they live a civil life. And he said things like, the quality of a human being is that they don't become angry. They're not prejudiced. They're not resentful. We're not even talking about spiritual, the qualities of a self-realized person. We're just talking about the qualities of what, according to the Vedas, would be considered a human being. So there were other qualities. Do you want me to read them? Would you like me to read those qualities? Would you be interested in knowing what a human being is? Let me just pull it up. It should be 1:9:26. So this might be the first time you find out whether you're human or not. You can take the test, okay? Number 1, okay, you can give yourself a score. If you give yourself 10, that means you fully, he's saying not to become. So you give yourself a 10, that means you're not angry. And you're, okay, so here it is. Number 1, not to become angry. Not to become angry. You ever get angry?
I'm out. I'm saying I'm out.
Yeah. Too bad you couldn't make it as a human. Maybe you can try. Keep trying. Not to lie. Raise your hand if you've never lied. Okay, we've got 100% here. Okay. Raise your hand if you've never been angry. Okay, we have 100%. To equally distribute wealth. That means if you have more money than you need, you give it to people who don't have enough. That means the guy next door is only making 50,000 a year, you're making 100,000, so you give him 25. Yeah. Have anyone ever done that? Okay, we're not doing very good. To forgive. To beget children only by one's legitimate wife. Of course, that's becoming a problem. Maybe not for us, but it's becoming a problem. To be pure in mind and hygienic in body. So to be pure in mind is even becoming difficult because of the influence of society. Not to be inimical toward anyone. That's amazing. Can you make this a little lower? Like halfway between where it was.
Oh, the volume?
Yeah, where it was and where you turned it up. This one is, I find this one I find this one to be most amazing. A little more, like one hair more. Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, perfect. Not to be inimical to anyone. Is that even possible in Kali Yuga? Because we get inimical to someone who cuts us off in a car, right? Or, your husband comes home late from work and, you're waiting for him. It's easy to get upset, right? Racial prejudice is pervasive. To be simple and to support servants or subordinates. Now, fasten your seatbelt for the next statement. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned preliminary qualities. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above mentioned qualities. We're not talking about being a devotee, just being a human. This is what is considered human. So, one time there was a discussion, and unfortunately I don't remember the context of the discussion, but Prabhupada's answer was, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. So, what he was referring to is that sometimes the behavior of those practicing spiritual life will lack some of these more civil human qualities. And I can explain the reason why. There's two main reasons. There's a sense that if you're religious, you're automatically higher or better than everyone else who's not religious. There's the sense that religious people are good, so if you do religious things, that means you're good. And if you think you're good, it is very, very difficult to realize you're not good. I know that's a very simple statement. But if you think you're good, it's hard to understand when you do something bad that it's bad, and it can go all the way up to killing. Because I can kill in the name of God because serving God is good. And so I don't see that killing is bad. I can execute women. I can make up false charges and execute them because I believe they did something they didn't. And in my religious scripture it says that women should be executed if they do this and that. And there's no shame, no regret, because what I did was good. I can actually annihilate a whole village and take it over. And if people don't surrender, I can kill them because I'm religious and it's good. So of course that's an extreme example. We don't do that, but on other levels we do that. We may not do any of these 9 things and think we're good because we chant Hare Krishna, or we do Arti every night, or we go to a Gita class. And so there are many, many qualities that sometimes we neglect because we think we're good because we're religious. Does that make sense? Yes. So we have to understand the problem a little more clearly. When you think you're a certain way, like let's say you believe you're a good mother or a good father or a good husband, a good wife, a good sister, a good brother, a good uncle, a good grandparent, whatever it is. If your conception is that you're good, it's very difficult to see when you do something wrong. You don't notice it. Because good mothers don't ever do anything wrong, right? Good mothers would not mistreat their children. Do good mothers mistreat their children? Sometimes. Do good mothers sometimes make bad decisions for their children? Sometimes. Do they sometimes ignorantly feed them things that aren't healthy? My mother did. When I was born in 1950, nobody knew anything about health. And so in the name of affection, she fed me so many things that were bad. But she thought she was a good mother. So how would she even understand she was harming me? Because there's no sense in her mind that she could ever do anything bad because she's a good mother. So when we think we're good, we have no sense that we could not be good. And so it's a little bit, it's of concern, or maybe you could even say potentially dangerous, when you become religious, because you will read in Bhagavad Gita and other books that devotees are better than non-devotees. So you're becoming a devotee, or you have been practicing Krishna consciousness. You're not supposed to think you're better. If you're actually advanced, you will think others are better. But we read in our books that devotees are better than non-devotees. And we think, I'm a devotee, therefore I must be better, even when objectively, in some cases, I'm not. I may get very angry. I may be inimical towards people. I may be resentful. Maybe my neighbor's not a devotee, but they're more peaceful, they're less resentful, they're more forgiving, they're less prejudiced. It may be, yes? So there's a tendency for us not to notice because we're devotees, and we all know devotees are good, and I'm good because I'm a devotee. Because I read Bhagavad Gita and I chant Hare Krishna and I do arti every night. So that makes me good, makes me better. And so what many of the devotees, especially the older devotees in our movement, have seen or recognized, that sometimes in our attempt to become Krishna conscious or to become transcendental, we may neglect certain behaviors which might be considered more sattvic, in the mode of goodness, or more what we, as Prabhupada said, be conscious, more conscious, like simple acts of compassion or empathy, or how should we say, introspection, humility, willing to say I'm sorry, willing to admit I made a mistake, things like that. And so, now one would naturally think that as we advance in Krishna consciousness, that would happen. And the Shastra says, if you're a pure devotee, you develop all good qualities. And there are 26 qualities of a devotee that are given in the Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. In fact, I'll read the list because I have it somewhere, I think. Let's see if I have it. Yes. Okay, these are the qualities, the 26 qualities of a devotee. Before I read them, Prahlad Maharaj said that when one becomes a devotee, or one becomes not a devotee, when one becomes a pure devotee, they develop all good qualities. And these are the qualities. Automatically they'll develop these qualities when they become a pure devotee. So we can also do an analysis how we're doing. Give yourself a grade, 1 to 10. Merciful, humble, truthful, equal to all, faultless. That's a big one, isn't it? Magnanimous, mild, and clean. They're without material possessions. That means they don't identify anything as they own anything. And they perform welfare work for everyone. They are peaceful, surrendered to Krishna, and desireless. They are indifferent to material acquisitions and are fixed in devotional service. They completely control the 6 bad qualities, lust, anger, greed, and so forth. They eat only as much as required, and they are not inebriated. In other words, they're not bewildered by the material world. They're not intoxicated with material success. They're respectful, grave, compassionate, and without false prestige. They're friendly, poetic, expert, and silent. There's 26 qualities. Of course, you could say devotee has more of these qualities. But Prahlad Maharaj said that a devotee develops all the qualities of the gods or the demigods. And sometimes when Prabhupada translate that verse of Prahlad Maharshi, he said, he develops all the qualities of God. Like that Krishna has so many qualities, and when you become Krishna conscious, you develop those qualities. Therefore, they're called divine qualities. Like sometimes people might say, can an atheist have good qualities? And you say, yes, but not divine qualities. He can be humble, but not divinely humble. He can be compassionate, but not divinely compassionate, because it's another level. So, now, if it's true that a devotee develops all good qualities, and I'm a devotee, then I could think, I have these qualities, or I'm on my way to have these qualities, or someday I will have these qualities. And that would not be untrue. But there's a problem, and I have something I want to read. I kind of give you a dialectic here. What do they call that? Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So, yeah. So, the thesis is, if you're a devotee, you develop all good qualities. What's the antithesis? I'll read the antithesis. A Vaishnava should be fully qualified. As stated in the Bhagavatam, anyone who becomes a Vaishnava has developed all the good qualities of the demigods. There are 26 qualifications in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. A devotee should always see that his Vaishnava qualities increase with the advancement of his Krishna consciousness. So, it means that it's not automatic. Prabhupada is saying we should see that these qualities are developing. What does that mean? It means we should try to live by these qualities. We should see that they're manifesting. And if we think all I have to do is just do devotional service and chant Hare Krishna, and these qualities will develop, that is if you're a pure devotee. Yeah, when you become a pure devotee, you'll have all these qualities, naturally. That's it. But we're not pure devotees, and when will we be pure enough that these qualities develop? So, in the interim, we have to practice. Like, for example, in the Gita, Krishna says that the sages or the sadhus, they must strenuously try to control their anger and their desire. And so what does that mean? It means that when we're pure, naturally anger and desire will be controlled. But when we're not pure, we have to strenuously try to control them. Right? So sometimes there's a misunderstanding. Well, I don't have to try to control them because when I become Krishna conscious, they'll be controlled. That's true for some things. Like Prabhupada said, when you become a devotee, you become vegetarian. That was true for me. I didn't become vegetarian until I became a devotee. I didn't give up drugs until I became a devotee. I didn't give up illicit sex until I became a devotee. And I wanted to give up these things, but I didn't have the strength. So it's true, without bhakti, or with bhakti, automatically so many things come. But at the same time, when we were initiated, Prabhupada asked us to not do these things. So, if by bhakti, automatically you won't do it, why would he ask you not to do it? Isn't that interesting? Isn't it? And I think it's very important for us. Because even though by the power of bhakti you won't do it, you have to make sure you won't do it. If you're getting initiated, you're taking a vow that I won't eat meat, I won't have illicit sex, I won't take drugs. So it's by the power of bhakti that I'll be successful. But I have to take a vow to make sure. I have to monitor, as Prabhupada said, you have to monitor, you have to make sure you're not doing it. So, I can just tell you what I have seen and observed because I've been in the Krishna conscious movement for 49 years, and 49 years and 2 months from the time I first moved in the temple, something like that. 49 years, 2 months and 1 week. Something like that. So, and I've lived, I don't know, 15 or 20 temples and visited maybe 50. So I've seen a lot of what's going on. And one of the things we see I see in myself, and others have told me they have the same challenges, and I see these challenges, is that we're conditioned souls. We don't come into this body with a clean slate. We come into this body with conditioning. Some more, some less. So we were talking about one of our God brothers. His name was Jayananda. So Jayananda was one of the most humble people I'd ever seen. And he was humble before he was a devotee. It wasn't that the day he became a devotee, he became humble. He was already humble. He came into this body humble, right? And we all come in with certain qualities. And then we can use those qualities in Krishna's service. And if you come in humble, it just makes it easier. That humility in and of itself, until you become a devotee, it doesn't do much for you. But once you become a devotee, then it's such an advantage. Or if you're compassionate, it's such an advantage. Or if you're disciplined, self-controlled, peaceful, tolerant by nature, it's such an advantage, isn't it? And so some people come in this body with these qualities. They're not devotees. And some people who have become devotees have very little of these qualities. And even after many, many years of Krishna consciousness, depending how deeply rooted the conditioning is, they still have these. And one of the most, I'm going to say obvious ways, or one of the most concerning ways these things are seen, they're seen in relationships. In bad relationships, not in good relationships, they're seen in bad relationships. Where sometimes we're belligerent, it has to be my way. I don't agree with you, I can't understand you, I don't want to understand you, I want to prove you're wrong, prove I'm right. These are very conditioned tendencies. I don't want to hear your point of view, you just listen to me. I don't want to compromise, this is the way I do it, etc., etc. And so these are real problems, and even though we're practicing Krishna consciousness, it's not like these things just go away like that. And it's not like we can think, well, you know, I'll just chant Hare Krishna and it'll all be good. But these things are very deeply rooted and difficult to deal with. And some of us have been chanting Hare Krishna a long time, and still these are challenges. Prejudice and divisiveness and bias, deeply rooted. So when we say be conscious, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious, these are the kind of things we're talking about, that we need to look at and we need to reflect on. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, he often said, don't criticize others, but rather reflect on your own problems and work on yourself. So there's a lot we have to work on. And when we lack in these qualities and we don't work on them, it inhibits our spiritual advancement. It inhibits our Krishna consciousness. So that's why Prabhupada said, be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. We'll need to develop certain qualities. And if we think I'm a devotee, I can do anything, that's dangerous. Because I'm a devotee, I chant and I do devotional service, I don't have to work on these things. It's dangerous. They will be problems. Obviously, if we have a bad temper, it's a problem. We'll tend to commit offenses to other devotees. We'll become intolerant with them. We'll become upset with them. And that'll impair our devotional service. Obviously, if we have better relationships, that's helpful. Relationships nourish devotional service. Obviously, if we have better relationships, we can do more to share Krishna consciousness. We'll have a more unified and synergistic movement. So these are some thoughts. I mean, I taught a whole course on this, and we did many, many self-reflective exercises just to reflect on where we need to work, what we need to work on. And when Prabhupada's saying here, what did he say? The devotee should always see that his Vaishnava qualities increase with the advancement of his Krishna consciousness. A devotee should be blameless because any offense by the devotee is a scar on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's duty is to always be conscious in his dealings with others, especially with another devotee. Always be conscious. Again, be conscious. Conscious means be aware. Be aware of your faults, be aware of your weaknesses, and work on them. That's what Prabhupada means. Don't just ascend from a lower stage to a higher stage and not build the foundation you need to stand on to be Krishna conscious. That's the idea. So how you become a saintly person? Those qualities, 26 qualities, they're called saintly person. Devotee means to become fully qualified with all the noble qualities. Those are the 26 qualities we just read. Devotee does not mean a rascal at the same time a devotee. No. As soon as you become devotee, the test is that all the 26 qualities will develop. You have to test yourself. Out of the 26 qualities, how much have I developed? If I am lacking, then you must know that you are not developing. This is the test. What are the qualities? So this is the antithesis. All the qualities will develop, and now Prabhupada's saying you should see that they develop. It seems to be a paradox, doesn't it? If I'm just Krishna conscious and they develop, why would I have to see if they're developing? I just continue my Krishna consciousness and they would develop. It's not exactly like that, because Prabhupada's saying you have to see, and if they're not developing, it means you're doing something wrong. So, and what might you be doing wrong? Giving in to some weakness. Giving into your anger, etc. Being resentful, being envious, and so forth. So, on different times and different occasions, Prabhupada would tell us, you should not be envious, you should not be jealous, you should be humble, etc. And he would show us how to do that, what it means. What do you mean by not being envious? Or what do you mean by being humble? And he would show us, it means you think this way and you act this way. So then when Prabhupada's saying you should see how these qualities are developing, you can monitor it. He's giving you ways of behavior that are non-envious, or ways of behavior that are humble. So maybe I'm not humble, but there are ways of acting humbly, right? People who are not humble can actually act humbly. Did you know that? Is that good news? I'm not humble, and Prabhupada's saying I should, there's something wrong if I'm not humble. All right, well, why don't you act humbly? That's where it starts, right? Because you can't just say I'm not humble, so if I'm not humble, that means I can't act humbly. No, okay, you're not humble, but you can act humbly, right? If Punya Shloka offends me, so I feel like offending him back. That's my conditioned side. Nobody offends me, and I shoot my arrows back at him. So maybe I feel like that. But Prabhupada's saying we have to see how the qualities are developing. So if I have to see how the qualities are developing, at least, although I want to shoot my arrows back at him, I can just say, I'm sorry, I upset you. Maybe I don't even believe it. Maybe I still think he's wrong, I'm right. But I can act humbly. And in the Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful story. The four Kumaras were going to Vaikuntha, and there's 7 gates, and they went through 6, and then they came to the last, and Jai Vijay saw them, and they thought, these 4 little boys aren't supposed to be here. What are you doing here? You get out of here. No, we've come to see Lord Vishnu. And Jai Vijay said, you don't belong here, you're just boys. And they got so upset. They said, you don't belong here. We curse you. You don't belong here. We curse you. You'll have to go into a world. And so Krishna, it was like Vishnu could hear this argument, and Vishnu came out. And you know what Vishnu did? He apologized for the behavior of Jai and Vijay. And then when he apologized, Jai and Vijay apologized. And when Jai and Vijay apologized, the 4 Kumars apologized. There's a nice story. This boy wants to get married. So he tells his father, I want to get married. Can you help me? Prepare me for marriage? He said, yeah, it's no problem. Just say I'm sorry. And the boy said, why should I say I'm sorry? He said, just say you're sorry. He said, but what does it have to do with preparing me for marriage? He said, no, just say you're sorry. But why? I didn't do anything wrong. Just say you're sorry, okay? But why should I say I'm sorry if I didn't do anything wrong? So this was going back and forth, back and forth. And finally the boy said, okay, I'm sorry. And he goes, good, okay, now you're ready to get married. Because sometimes you're going to have to say I'm sorry when it's not your fault. That's the practice of humility. Okay, I don't feel like saying I'm sorry, and I don't think I did anything wrong. But the practice of humility is to say I'm sorry. So when Prabhupada is saying you have to see that these qualities are developing, he's really saying, see that you're practicing them. And they will develop naturally when we become pure. But how are we going to become pure if we don't practice humility? How are we going to become pure if we allow our envy or anger to overtake us, if we don't try to control it? So sometimes devotees misunderstand that I don't have to control myself because all these qualities will develop when I become pure. But the process of becoming pure is to control yourself. So you practice. Obviously, Krishna says, control yourself. Samadhamma taposocham. Be equiposed, be peaceful, be free from duality, all these things. We're being instructed. So this is the idea. And so that's the synthesis. The synthesis is you practice living these qualities, and by doing that you become pure, and these qualities will naturally manifest. You won't have to practice, you will just be that way, right? Like now we're vegetarians, we don't have to practice it. We don't have to chant affirmations. Today I only eat vegetables. No, you're a vegetarian. It's over, it's finished. There's no question. You don't go by McDonald's, think, should I or shouldn't I? I don't know, this is tough. Tough decision, I don't know. Maybe I see McDonald's, I press the accelerator so I don't have a chance. No, to change my mind. We're not like that. That's not. And so that's what it's going to become when we're Krishna conscious. All these qualities will manifest fully. They won't need to be practiced. We won't be struggling with them. They will exist. But until then, we have to practice. So that's the synthesis. And so Prabhupada's saying, be conscious. So we're reading here, one of the meanings of being conscious is be conscious of where you're at, be conscious of what you're doing wrong, be conscious of where you need to improve. And don't just think that because I'm a devotee, everything I do is fine. If that were true, all of us would have amazing marriages. We would be in the top we would be in the top 0.0000001% of best marriages in the universe. Right? If that were true. That just by being a devotee we have all good qualities. We'd have amazing marriages. Look at the qualities we have. Kind, humble, meek, tolerant. Who wouldn't want a husband or wife like that? Right? And now you look at yourself in your relationships. And you know you're not always kind, humble, tolerant, meek, submissive, smiling, peaceful, equipoised, right? We know that. We have to work on it. We didn't bring all those qualities with us. And don't ever think just by being a devotee automatically you have those qualities. We know it's not true. We know we have to work on them.
But we know by the power of bhakti, we can work on them, and by the power of bhakti, they will develop when we become pure devotees. So why don't we take some questions? Yes.
When you become tolerant, like to develop some qualities, then some people take advantage of that. So how do you read this?
A very good question. There's two ways I'll answer it. And there are two different ways. And according to time and circumstance, you could apply either one. One way is if they take advantage, it's their problem. At least I did the right thing. So a lot of times in situations, our decision is going to have to be what's the right thing to do. Even if they respond in the wrong way, at least I'm not guilty of doing the wrong thing. So in that sense, why should I not act in a Krishna conscious way just because they're not going to appreciate it, or they're going to take advantage of it, or so forth. So that's one thought. Another thought is create boundaries. So when they react, you're protected. And another thought is that tolerance is meant to help us. In some cases, we may not want to tolerate something because it may hurt us. So maybe they will hurt you or take advantage of you in a way that's detrimental to you, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. However, this is something that's very interesting. In our philosophy, it says we should protect devotees but not protect ourselves. So it's a general instruction. Like if something bad happens to us, we're supposed to think, well, that's just my karma. And Krishna has reduced it and I deserve worse. But if something bad happens to another devotee, we're supposed to protect them. So we don't tell the other devotee, when he says something really bad happened to me, we don't tell the other devotee, oh, that's just your karma, you deserve worse. That's what the Shastra says. We think that way about ourselves. Oh, that's my karma, I deserve worse. But for the other devotee, we protect them. That's interesting, isn't it? So it's a general teaching, not always easy to follow. Maybe we won't even understand why we should follow it, because we could get abused with that philosophy. So my reconciliation of that is that we wouldn't want to do anything which would be detrimental to our spiritual life. So if I have to protect myself because I'm protecting my Krishna consciousness, I will. And if I'm tolerating something that's destructive, then I shouldn't tolerate it. Because tolerance could be in the mode of ignorance also. So, but tolerance is an aspect of humility. And so when we look at things that we can tolerate or should tolerate, then we do it. And if we look at things that maybe we shouldn't tolerate, maybe we're being abused in a way that we can't practice Krishna consciousness properly or peacefully or whatever, and then we don't tolerate it because that would be detrimental. So there's kind of a balance there. And you could also say that perhaps if you were more Krishna conscious, you would be able to tolerate a situation, or maybe even you would be abused, but it wouldn't bother you. You know, like so many devotees have been abused, Thakur Haridas, and so many, but they were evolved enough that it didn't bother them. You know, they sent this prostitute to Thakur Haridas. That's pretty abusive, isn't it? They want to catch him in the act, and he knew it was happening. He could have just left, but it didn't bother him because he wanted to save that woman. So it's, you know, he was able to tolerate that. And there is one place in either in a lecture or Prabhupada's books, he said you have to apply these practices according to your level. Like Nityananda tried to save Jagai and Madhai. Probably we shouldn't find gangs and try to preach to them. Let's follow in the footsteps of Jagai and Madhai, and let's travel the world finding the most dangerous gangs, and we'll preach to them. And Prabhupada said, no, you have to know your capacity. So if it's not your capacity, don't do it, then it'll backfire. So if it's not your capacity to tolerate something, then maybe even you should tolerate it, but you see, if I tolerate it, then it'll be detrimental for me, or I'll be taken advantage of in a way it'll be detrimental for me, then I may not. Like around the world today, in the name of religion, so many women are being abused. And they're meant to believe that they're bad and they're getting punished because they're bad, and so they tolerate it. And many of them come out extremely damaged, physically and emotionally, because of tolerating it. So I've personally seen it. Because if a woman is physically or verbally abused, it makes her feel like she's useless. And then she starts thinking she's useless and acting like she's useless. And I've seen many women destroyed by that. So I would tell them, no, don't tolerate this, because I can see it's going to destroy you. So if that's the case, no, you shouldn't. We should be tolerant, but not to the point where it's going to destroy you. And like I said, sometimes you have to put boundaries to say, if you ever do this again, then that's it. I have tolerated it, but it's gone too far. So you have to act according to your own realization. And even you know that if I were more Krishna conscious, I could tolerate it, but this is my realization, what can I do? It's destructive for me, so I have to act and hope that I could be better. And in some cases, there is no better. It's an intolerable. It can't be tolerated. Nobody could tolerate it. Nobody should tolerate it. Sometimes it helps people when you don't tolerate it, because they don't know that they're abusing you. They don't know you're mistreating you until you'd say, I can't tolerate this. And then they didn't realize it, and that makes them realize it. So sometimes it's a service to the other person to let them know.
Prabhupada said once that it's sinful to allow to be cheated.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah. Well, Chanakya Pandit said, yeah, because Prabhupada meant we're protecting Krishna's interest and property. So if we allow someone to cheat us, then that's our fault. That's our sin. And Chanakya said, if you're dealing with cheaters, then you have to be a cheater, because they'll take advantage of you. So for us as devotees, when we're engaged in devotional service, then that means someone is taking advantage of Krishna, and we have to protect his interest. So in that sense, it would be sinful on our part to not protect our interest, to allow ourselves to be cheated. Although in that Juhu case, Prabhupada allowed himself a little bit to be cheated. He just wanted to get the land, and that was more important. And so he paid more than he needed, and he knew that Mr. Nai was trying to cheat him out of the land, but he took a gamble because he wanted that land. Yeah, we have stories of Prabhupada mailing a letter and asking how much would a stamp cost and how much would a rickshaw cost, because he wanted to save a few rupees. And whatever was cheaper, he would. So that in that sense, we want to preserve Krishna's resources, and it would be sinful on our part not to. If I can buy something for $20 less by driving a mile down the street, yeah, I should. Sometimes we've been in situations where we wanted to buy a church, but they wouldn't sell it to us. And we had to buy it privately and then have the private party sell it to us. So, all's fair in love and war. So it was, it was a beautiful property and exactly what we wanted, and they wouldn't sell it to us once they found out we were devotees. So one of our congregational members bought it, and then, sold it to us. So, yeah. Sometimes we have to do that. Play their game. But it's for Krishna's interest, yes. Thank you for that question. That was a very good question. A lot of times when we ask these questions, we want to evaluate our own level, like how much can I tolerate? And as I said, maybe we know we should tolerate more, but we can't, so we have to deal with it. It's just like we have to be real about it. Okay, I should be up here, but I'm here, so I have to deal with it. This is a disturbance for me. And I'm working on being able to tolerate it, but I can't tolerate it now, so it's a problem. So we have to deal with it. Sometimes maybe there's friction between two people and we have to be a little bit distant from one another. We should be able to get along, but we're unable to get along, so the way we get along is by being distant. Sometimes two devotees couldn't get along, so Prabhupada would separate them because they couldn't work together, and he would give the devotee who couldn't work well with the leader, he'd give him his own project. Okay, you have your own project, you be in charge. Because that devotee couldn't get along with this leader because he needed to be in charge. So Prabhupada recognized that and facilitated that. So sometimes that's a solution for two people who can't get along. They just do two different things. Not the best, but that's what you have to deal with. So that's what Prabhupada did. A lot of times, Prabhupada did not preach to them to get along. He just gave one of them their own service. Because he saw that they weren't going to be able to get along. But, we can't use that as an example for ourselves. We can use that as a management strategy if needed. But for ourselves, our first aim is to try to elevate ourselves as much as possible and then deal realistically with where we're at once we've tried our best. This is the best I can do. Okay, I wish I could do better. At this point in my life, I can't. And I'm working on it, and I'm praying that I can be better. But now I have to deal with what I can do. So this is my level of tolerance at this point. Yes?
How can we stay conscious all the time in regards to when the situation arises, whether that be a provocative situation, we can get angry or other things.
Conscious that we're doing the wrong thing?
Yeah.
Conscious of our faults? How can we always be conscious? Very good question. My personal experience is you can't do anything you don't want to do. So there has to be a desire first to improve. Because if the desire isn't there, you will find it very difficult to admit any fault. And if there's a desire to improve, it's much easier to admit faults because you actually want to see those faults. Could you imagine if in our congregation here, if any one of us had an issue with another devotee, we could go up to them and say, Prabhu, the other day I saw you were talking to so-and-so and I felt it wasn't respectful, or I thought you were rude, or you really were arrogant and it really disturbed that devotee, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And the devotee would say, thank you so much. That's really good to know so that I can work on this. Okay, you're all laughing, thinking, that'll never happen. Well, it could happen. But the only way it could happen is if you want to improve yourself. Because if you want to improve yourself, then you're always grateful to those who point out your mistakes. You go to a doctor, and the doctor says nothing's wrong with you. But you know something's wrong with you, so you're disappointed. So you go to another doctor, and the other doctor finds out, yeah, you have a problem with your pancreas. That's why your digestion is bad. and he has some protocol to cure it. And so you're really happy that he found out what was wrong, isn't it? But when we have an internal problem, the false ego is not happy to find out that, oh, I didn't realize that I was rude with people. I had no idea. False ego doesn't want to find out. And as we said before, if my conception of myself is I'm not rude, it's very difficult to admit that I am. Or if my conception of myself is that I'm a nice person, I could never be rude, I'm never rude with anyone. I'm never harsh, I'm always understanding and kind and soft. If that's what I think about myself, it's very difficult to believe someone when they say you're rude. But if you actually want to improve yourself, you will say, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't know I was rude. Really, can you explain that? Tell me what I did. I want to know. That's called humility, in case you didn't know what humility looks like. That's what it looks like. There's no pretension, there's no false ego, there's no defense. It's just, tell me more, I want to improve myself. So my personal realization is, not until the day comes when you want to improve yourself will you be able to. Because the false ego will get so bruised if you're not ready. It will just shut down, and you won't allow any of that information to come in, because it'll destroy you. So as long as you want to maintain some prestige within the society, and that's more important than improving yourself, you won't be able to improve. You'll defend yourself. Here's a typical defense mechanism when we're lacking humility. I come up to you and say, I saw you talking to this devotee the other day, and they were expressing problems they were having, and you were completely insensitive, and you were judging them rather than listening to them. And it was really upsetting for me to watch it, because I could see when the devotee left, they were really disturbed. Well, I saw you doing that also, just the other day, but I don't say anything to you, but I mean, if you want to talk, that's an immediate sign you have no interest in improving yourself. You have absolutely no interest. I was just dealing with a situation in which there was a problem, it was obvious, and I was giving some advice to the devotee how to deal with the problem. And I was just explaining the problem based on history. This is what happened. There was nothing there. Shot back at me and complained about me. That's typical. If we don't want to improve, we can't hear. Even if what the person's saying is 108% true, and everyone in the universe will testify it's true, we can't hear it because we don't want to. Because we want to maintain an image that I'm nice, I'm kind, whatever it is. So that's where it starts. And hopefully someday, sooner than later, all of us will understand that that's what Krishna consciousness means. It means to overcome anything that's blocking us from becoming pure devotees, and anything that's inhibiting the development of these 26 qualities. And if there's anything I can learn from anybody that will help me develop these qualities, I should be very open and very happy. I should say, thank you, Prabhu, for pointing that out. I didn't realize I did that. You really think I did that? Yeah, I really think you did. Thank you. What do you think I could do to improve? There's no false ego. There's no like, oh, he's caught me. My image is shot. No, it's just, or you would say, oh, I'm really sorry I did that. Let's go find the devotee. I want to apologize to them. That would be the proper attitude, right? You would think that someone on the spiritual path who is sincerely desiring to be Krishna conscious would naturally react that way. But I have some bad news for you. Fasten your seatbelt. This is scary. One of our devotees was asked a question. He works with ISKCON conflict resolution. That means if two devotees have a difficulty they can't resolve themselves, or the local leaders can't resolve, they go into conflict resolution with a trained mediator. And someone asked this mediator a very important question. Who is it more difficult to mediate for, devotees or non-devotees? What do you think his answer was?
Devotees.
devotees. And he said, why is that? And he said, because they have bigger egos than the non-devotees. So you can meditate on that. I don't want to give a lecture on that, but I think I already explained that in the beginning, where devotees were better. I've been a devotee 49 years. That means I'm better than all of you, right? No, it doesn't. It just means I think that. That's the conditioned way of thinking. But the advanced way of thinking is, you're all better than me. I'm nothing. I'm fallen. I'm just a product of Prabhupada's mercy. Anything I can do, it's His grace. I have no good qualities. And I'm so inspired and appreciative of all of your devotion. That's advancement in Krishna consciousness. But a lot of us don't advance because we're concerned about image and ego and power and control. And therefore, when that becomes more important, how are we ever going to see what's wrong with us? Right? So the question is, what's important to you? Looking good, looking spiritual, or actually being spiritual? That's the big question. What's more important? Looking Krishna conscious or being Krishna conscious? I can't answer that question for you. I can only throw it out. And I think for some of us, looking Krishna conscious is more important than being Krishna conscious. Our image is more important. And that's why we can't listen. And that, I think also we can recognize that it wouldn't even come to the point where I have to tell you, you have to tell me. You would be so aware just because you want to improve. You would catch yourself in the act of judging that devotee when they're speaking to you and just stop and say, I'm sorry, just let me listen to what you're saying. I shouldn't have said it. You will catch yourself because you so much want to be a devotee and live with those qualities. That's my personal realization. You have, how do you do anything? You have to be inspired to do it, otherwise you can't. How do you eat your vegetables that you don't like that are healthy? You be inspired to be healthy. How do you exercise? Be inspired to be healthy. How do you get up in the morning? Inspired to be Krishna conscious. And how do you recognize your faults? Inspired to improve yourself. Now here's the scary part. There's a lot of people who are not devotees, at least not devotees of Krishna, who are willing to look at their faults, are very open to it. And that's a huge paradox, isn't it? Yeah. And so this religious paradox is when you become religious, you think you're better. It's a dangerous trap. And the need to, I've been a devotee 49 years. I could think, well, I have to show you by every symptom possible that I'm a pure devotee, because that's what you expect. But if I could admit a fault in front of you, that would have a much more powerful effect on you than me trying to pretend that I'm perfect. Because you would see, oh my God, even he's admitting he did this. And we had this experience with one of our godbrothers. He admitted a fault. It was a very big fault, and he was a leading devotee. And he was so appreciated for admitting it. The fault was very big, but what people felt when they read the fault, they said, no one in ISKCON has ever admitted doing such a bad thing as this devotee did. And because he admitted it, he was glorified. Nobody condemned him. What he did was condemnable, but his humility was so great, he was glorified for admitting it. So that's where it's at, right? And so, yeah. Now, the other thing is, which is very interesting also, if you want to get help, if you have a problem, obviously you have to admit the problem. So if you're afraid to admit a problem, then how are you going to be able to talk about it with anybody who could help you? So in Sangha with devotees, one of the things we do is Guyam Akyati Prichyati. We open up the guyam, the heart, the cave, the secret place. We open it up and we say, Punya Shloka Krishna Prabhu, I need to talk to you. I have this problem. I need your help. And I think you're the right person. And then I open up to Punya Shloka and I admit the problem. And then we talk about it. And because I'm talking about it, it's helping me deal with it. And if I'm afraid to open up, because I'm afraid my image will be blown, then how do I deal with the problem? And many people have been forced down by a problem that they couldn't talk about. They were afraid to talk about it because they would reveal to the world their weakness. But that's what devotees do. Because they don't have false ego, they reveal their weakness. And you know who reveals their weakness the most? The most advanced devotees. At least in my life, the people who most reveal their weaknesses to me are higher devotees. Isn't that interesting? Because that's what happens when you advance. You become more transparent. And you're more concerned about advancing than about image. Does that make sense? So, that's the answer to your question. You have to want it. When, let's say you want to develop a quality, if you have friends or you know other devotees who have that quality, then spend time with them. It'll inspire you to be like them. So if you have difficulty being humble, find somebody humble and be close with them. It'll inspire you. If you have difficulty being honest, find somebody honest. If you have difficulty getting out of your own selfishness, find somebody who's not selfish. That's how it works. Anything else? Yes?
Prabhu, it's a good suggestion that, the first thing we need to do is we need to learn that we need to accept things, and we have a sincere desire to accept our mistakes.
Yes.
So, among the devotees, we can try to do this. Now, from here we go to the workplace. The culture is I am right, everyone else is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So now with the same mentality, if we start following there, then we may be rejected back, or it is considered as a weakness.
Yeah. The tamasic workplace, where bad is good and good is bad. I have a prediction. Someday, the smart CEOs are going to realize that sattva gun is way more effective than tamagun. And maybe you can show some sattvic behavior and action, and maybe they'll realize. Because I don't believe that sattvic behavior can be overrun by tamasic behavior. It's just a way of applying it. Because humility is a power. So sometimes I think we misunderstand humility, and so then people take advantage of us. Humility means Krishna's in control. Krishna's the power. Krishna's the intelligence. Krishna's the capability. So I don't know the specific situations, but that's just my premise. Sattva gun is much more powerful than tamagun. And I think some companies are applying that principle. They understand that. But most companies are so tamasic that when you try to apply sattvic principles, it's just like nobody gets it. At the same time, I would say that you don't want to give up your internal humility. You don't want to compromise your values and principles. So you have to meditate on how you can keep your principles. Now, I can give you some insight. One insight is that if you're working for someone, they're paying you to do your job. And so, one of the qualities of a Shudra is that he's devoted to his master. So if you're my master and you're paying me, that means I'm in the position of a Shudra. And so, if he is doing something detrimental to the business, I'm going to deal with it, because that will protect your interest, and that's my duty. So I could get very heavy with him to protect your interest, because it's my duty to protect your interest. Maybe I'll even get him fired because I think he's a detriment to the company. And that's still humility because I'm being humble to my boss by looking after his interests. So that's another way of looking at humility. Like Arjuna was humble until he decided not to fight. Then he was proud. Isn't that interesting? Arjuna says, okay, I'm not fighting, I'm going to become a Brahmin. And now he's become proud. Doesn't look proud, it looks quite humble, but he's proud. And then at the end of the Gita, Arjuna says, okay, I'm going to fight. That's his humility. That looks like pride. Okay, I'm going to fight, I'm going to kill. Oh, look how proud he is. Krishna says, are you prepared to fight? Yes, I'm prepared to fight. Oh, look how proud he is. That's when he became humble. Why humble? Because he did what Krishna said. Why proud? Because in the beginning he didn't do what Krishna said. So you can't just base humility on how much you bow your head down and how softly you speak and how many people you allow to go on the line in front of you. You have to evaluate it differently in terms of your dedication to those that you have allegiance to. And also, not compromising your integrity. That's humility also. Sometimes they do these social experiments where they ask employees to lie. Say, I'm going to need you to do this, and then employees won't do it. And then they give them a raise in a higher position. And they try to force them to lie. And they say, we might have to get rid of you if you don't lie. And they say, that's fine. And they call them back the next day and they say, thank you for being so honest. You just got promoted. So that does happen sometimes. And that story when a Muslim took over a business and he told all the Hindus, you cannot have any external signs of being Hindu. And one person came and wore their tilak. And he said, none of you can wear any tilak or tika or anything except for this man because he was brave to wear his tilak. So I'm going to let him. Yes?
So sometimes when we become aware of our faults, or someone has helped us become aware of our faults, we may take it internally and become remorse or
Discouraged? Yeah, okay, yeah.
how can you overcome that?
So she's asking, well, let's say I tell Punyashloka, you didn't deal with this person properly. Then now Punyashloka goes home and he thinks, I'm such a bad person. Why even try to do anything, right? So what's happening is we're identifying the failure as the core of who we are as a person. And when we do that, we're in big trouble. And that usually comes, it often comes to people who have low self-esteem. They can't distinguish their failure from themselves. Like I burnt the chapatis, that means my life is useless. I burnt the chapatis, that means I can't do anything right. Everything I do is wrong. No, I just said you burnt the chapatis. I didn't say everything you do is wrong. Actually, you do many things great. No, that's what you meant. Everybody knows I do everything wrong. Yeah. No. So, there's a saying, when you fail, it doesn't mean you're a failure. So that's the problem. We fail and we think I'm a failure. No, we just failed at making chapatis. We burnt them. We weren't paying attention. So that's all that happened, was the chapatis were burnt. You're fine. You're still the same person. There's an interesting thing also, because it works the other way. When you become super successful and this and that, you're still the same person. Don't go up and don't go down. Don't get affected by it. Because you're not, your company, hits it and you've got $10 million. You're not a better person. You just did better business. But your company goes bankrupt. You're not a worse person. It's just the market situation, or you made a bad decision and whatever. So we shouldn't identify externally with those things. So that's what a lot of people unfortunately do, and that's why when I tell you you burnt the chapatis, you take it personally. That's an attack on your sense of who you are. That's the problem. Yes?
Are you trying, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand this more, but are you trying to separate yourself as a person and as a devotee, two different things? When you say...
Trying to separate yourself from the failure, the external action of failing. So let's say you did something wrong, and I tell you you did something wrong, and you identify that as a failure, as you as a person, you as a person are a failure, as opposed to you just failed. You failed in that specific activity. And it's good to be aware of that that's how we're processing feedback. And that means we're very insecure about who we are. It's like we have a self that's, it's so bruised that as soon as someone just says, you should have done this way, then the self gets bruised. Oh, so you think I'm useless? No, I just said, it would have been better to wash it this way. Oh, so you think I'm stupid? No, I didn't say you're stupid. You know that scene, that's a typical scene. There's a joke like that. So the husband's going to the gym, and he tells his wife, I'm going to the gym. And she says, you didn't invite me. What, you think I'm lazy? Well, no, you can come if you want. You don't think I can make my own decisions? Okay, you don't have to come. Well, you think, it's just like... Now, although it's funny, it's true. These things, when we identify our mistakes as being a lack of our sense of humanness or goodness or whatever it is, then we're in trouble. And that's often why we pretend to have an image, so we can get compliments from people to build up that thing that we fear that we lack. So I'm going to pretend to be intelligent because actually I don't think I'm intelligent. And if I pretend that I'm intelligent, you'll say, oh, that was a very intelligent talk you gave. And that will build up my sense that I'm intelligent because I doubt it. And so generally, when we try to portray an image, it's good to ask ourselves, what do I doubt about myself that I'm trying to portray this to people? Like, let's say I portray like I'm really compassionate or nice. Do I doubt that I'm actually compassionate and nice? Is that why I'm portraying it? It's possible. That's why I'm portraying it. I might portray it just because I want to get people's affection or sympathy or whatever, but I might portray it because I doubt that I am. And I need people to confirm that I am because I doubt it. And if you tell me I'm compassionate, then I'll believe it, because I don't believe it right now. So, yeah, we're complex creatures. But if we can disassociate mistakes we make from our sense of who we are as a good person, then it's much easier to hear. Because then we can just hear that I burnt chapatis. We're not hearing that I'm a failure in life. We're just hearing, I burnt chapatis. Oh yeah, I did. Oh, I must have kept them on the flame. Right? So I'm like, you're going to have a whole divorce over burnt chapatis. It was just a burnt chapati, it's not a big thing. Yeah. Or, a 3-hour argument over, so you don't like me, right? Is that what you're saying? No, it's not what I'm saying. Well, sounds like what you're saying. No, I said, the chapatis are burnt. Well, that means you think, I don't know how to cook, right? That's what you're saying. No, So that's something we have to look at if that's how we respond to feedback. Then we have to know that's what's going on inside. Whenever we fight back or we feel that we've been stabbed to death over some little comment that, like you tell me, Punya Shloka says, class was supposed to end at 8:30 because people have to, go to bed early. It's kind of, some people said that, they were disturbed and okay, well, all right, then I'm never coming back here. Like no, I go everywhere around the world. Nobody tells me that I can't go 15 minutes extra. So if that's the way you want to be, okay, fine, no problem. I'm just not going to come back. And you think, what kind of devotee are you? What's going on here? You would just expect him to go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. You didn't tell me. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. I thought you knew. No, I didn't know. Okay. So tomorrow, 8:30, it's like finished. Right? So even though we're devotees on the path of developing these 26 qualities, we do have conditioning, and these things come out. And therefore, Prabhupada said, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. Don't just think by becoming a devotee, automatically these things will go away. You have to work on them. You have to be aware of them. Some things will go away, and for some people, things go away quicker. But for others, they don't. It's just a reality. We're not perfect. Yet. Conditioned soul. Yes?
You were saying something about conditioning, obviously you're saying about conditioning and about low self-esteem. But sometimes what might happen is you might say something to somebody and they don't normally react like that. But if they're having a bad day, or there's things like hormones in play, there's lack of sleep, there's perhaps something that's happened on that day, and I'm not saying that's an excuse for acting a certain way, but it might not necessarily be the fact that they're taking it, that they've got a problem with low self-esteem or anything like that, or it's their conditioned self. It could just be a particular moment, or, being a female, I know what it's like being a female body, that, you might say something in 10 minutes time and I might react a certain way, and then you might say it 20 minutes later and I'll be completely different, So, I just wanted to touch on that
That's
there is
true.
other things that play a
That's
part.
true. But if you act the same way every time, then it would be different. Then we could isolate, there must be some constant there. But if just one day you get upset but normally you don't, then it's obviously.
Normally the parties wouldn't be a problem if I burnt them, but for one day I just completely hit the roof and had a meltdown.
Well, that's good information for husbands to know. Gentlemen, don't try to logically analyze hormones, because they're not logical. But your therapist would say, don't blame it on the hormones. Take responsibility for your hormones. Right? Of course, I can't say that because I'm not a woman. Maybe that's impossible. I don't know. But that's for you to decide. Anything else?
From my question would be how we can find the balance between direct sadhana and cultivating those qualities.
Yes.
Because my experience is that usually I'm good at something and just concentrate on something, then that really goes well. So if I'm doing sadhana, I'm chanting, breathing, usually, oftentimes I'm coming to the point where I don't want to do anything else, and it just goes so good, and so but then karma around you're still not in a situation where you can renounce, so it's kind of like, you have duties, you have to attend to other things, but those things they neglected. So then from this, good point of good silent, vibrant and testing, and you ribbon yourself or whatever, pushed by situation, go to the practical side of things. And unless I fully focus on that, not much happening there, not much of the progress.
Mm-hmm.
So how to find this, is there any hope for the balance?
Well, in regards to the topic tonight, it is sadhana to work on those qualities. So it's not a separate category like tending to your material life. So if you see it that way, it's just part of your practice to act through these qualities rather than just not even think about it. But if you're asking how to deal with the balance between material and spiritual,
practical and
because the material affects the spiritual, and the spiritual affects the material. So if you neglect something materially, it's going to come haunt you, and then that's going to infiltrate your sadhana. It's going to harm you. If you don't take care of your health, or you don't take care of a relationship, or you don't take care of your finances, or something, eventually it's going to haunt you. So if you see it in connection with sadhana, it's not separate. It's a holistic process.
But it's two different energies.
Two different energies,
Yes,
but
they
affecting, but if you, yeah, it can be two different energies, but it's one whole, because one affects the other. Definitely, you know, if you don't have any money, it's hard, you know, that's going to affect your Krishna consciousness, right? I can say from my own experience how to deal with that. By just accepting the reality of the necessity that it has to be dealt with because it exists. It's not going to go away. It's a reality. And just roll up your sleeves and do it because it has to be done. And do it as much as you have to. And it's easier to do it than neglect it. It's like the tooth, you know, it's rotting and you don't want to get it pulled. So you don't do anything. And then one day you wake up, you can't neglect it forever. So better deal with it. It's easier to deal with it before it rots, isn't it? Okay, we should stop. It's late. Tomorrow we're having a japa workshop. You're all invited. It starts at 10. If you chant japa and want to improve your japa, then you won't want to miss this because if you miss it, as I said last night, you're just going to hear about what you missed. So rather than hear about what you missed, better don't miss it. That's my humble suggestion. It'll be well worth your time. It'll make a huge difference in your japa, and if your japa improves, everything improves in your life. I also have a book on japa. It's called Japa Affirmations. I have another book I wrote, and I have my music and lectures on USB sticks if you're interested. If you like what we talked about tonight, you'll like my book and you'll like my lectures. If you didn't like what we talked about tonight, you won't like my book and you won't like my lectures. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.
Prabhupada ki